we have a motor that's ceramic, that's like a rotary engine and Wankel motor put together, is the best way to describe it, to be backward compatible for people to understand. And then what happens is that if you take a look at a hydrogen vessel that you would make hydrogen in, it looks an awful lot like, and it's made of nickel, a sleeve that goes into the block of an engine. So they made it so that the actual cylinder where the piston goes up and down is what's used to make the actual hydrogen. So you have a combustion engine where the cylinder itself is creating the dynamics to be able to create the hydrogen on demand for when it gets to top dead center and has the ignition, just as it's required. Then you have magnets around that to be able to create a generator, electric motor, hydrogen, and combustion all in one, all four in a ceramic motor, and it runs at 26 degrees Celsius. We're happy to share this with the world. You can see it and you can make it yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. You know, sometimes at Thanksgiving, you have just those remarkable meetings, whether it be with family members who clue you on to a new idea, or friends call, or there's just meetings that take place, and it seems that things coalesce. And if you're in the right mind frames for success, finding ideas for breakthroughs, they seem to come, especially around these holiday periods. I had one of those exact things happen to me over the last couple of weeks. A friend of mine who lives down in Costa Rica says to me, you know what, we're going to have to retool the entire world economy. Now, it's not going to be by choice, but if we're going to have to retool it, we're going to have to do small projects like, I don't know, replace the entire energy paradigm and spectrum right now with hydrogen so people can have a more inexpensive way to produce whatever they would do for either factories or homes. And also you're going to have to replace and retool the entire economic system based on cryptocurrency. And he said, well, that's a tiny pet project. Revamp all energy on the planet as well as the entire economic system. So we'll start there. And he says, you know, my friend Tom, you might want to talk to him because they just had some hydrogen breakthroughs. And I said, what do you mean hydrogen breakthrough? And do you think that you could mine cryptocurrency using a Tesla? And when I say Tesla, I'm talking about the automobile. And here we go. That was enough for me to reach out and make a call. And I'm glad, Tom, that we had a chance to connect over the Thanksgiving holiday era for those of us in the U.S. I know you're up in Canada, so that doesn't count. But I think everybody out there listening right now is going to have a mind-opening 30 minutes to an hour here that we're going to talk about in the way that you perceive reality, what's possible in this world that we're living in, and how things are going to shift over these next couple of years. Whether you want it to shift or not, everything's in flux at the moment. You already see the writing across every wall. There's no wall that there's not writing on right now that doesn't say we're shifting to something new. A bend around the corner to let you see one possibility as we move forward through 2021 to 2025. Tom Ross, president of Desnick.com. Tom, thanks for joining me. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. The tipping point has just happened. Morgan Stanley just did a $1 billion, that's with a B, cap raise to be able to put in infrastructure to create 100 tons of hydrogen a day. So that tells you that we're not trying to make this happen. It's already in play and it's already over the fence. Like, it's a long way over the fence. The challenge is with fuel cells and the traditional way of doing things, it's not super efficient. It's still very expensive from a traditional oil, gas, coal, nuclear, so on. So what's happened here is we've had a 50x was the first one, reduction in cost. With no rare earth materials, very simple device, no breaking laws of thermodynamics or anything. So that's where we're at. Now, to give you a bit of background, 20 years, $70 million invested, already 2 contracts to be able to convert 2 entire countries where they mandate and legislate that all vehicles have this put on it. So this is not in a garage. There's 1 million road miles that are already vetted, from the ice roads to the deserts. So this is ready to rock and roll. But the market wasn't ready. Now the market's ready. And now this shift from a US dollar to a cryptocurrency to replacing oil with hydrogen is well underway. And the old whales of the market and the new young whales of crypto and so on are now going to be swimming in the same water that creates this hydrogen. That's where we are today. So,
well, let me ask you, if I could jump in and ask a question. It sounds like we're just replacing an apple with an apple. It sounds like huge industry is going to be required to make this hydrogen and then transport it, and you're going to have to go to the same places to do. It sounds like we're just going from a liquid to a gas. So what's the caveat here? Well, why is this such a unique thing?
The breakthrough is this is energy on demand as required. So it doesn't use a fuel cell. It goes into a combustion chamber. And then the only thing that comes out the other end is water and oxygen. So it's 2 cents a kilowatt hour, 10 cents a kilogram for hydrogen, when everybody else is claiming $4 or $5, but it's more like $14 to $16 a kilogram, plus transport, plus storage. The magic of this is it's on demand right where you need it at the time. Because when you bring electricity from a nuclear plant or wherever it is, or stored energy and fuel, there's transport trucks, there's refining, there's a boat, there's lots of different things to get it to you. The wires, electricity alone, 50% of the electricity that comes to your house is gone. It goes off into the atmosphere. And then at night, they can't just take a nuclear plant and run it up and down, because they have to run it at a certain level, like running your car in the driveway and holding the gas pedal down and then only putting it in gear when it's required for that peak time. So there's so much losses in our system that it's just huge. So water, wind, solar, all these things, you have to have a storage system because they're intermittent. Where with this, you simply just make the hydrogen instantly goes into the combustion chamber, pushes the piston down, and then it makes electricity, goes into a very small battery for little surges and stuff that you need. You have regenerative braking and stuff. So think of it like a Prius, but it's running on hydrogen. And that's really what this is. There's different versions of it. There's a Happy Meal 1, 2, and 3. The first one is any diesel, gas, doesn't matter what it is in the world, you can put this onto right now. And it drastically reduces the emissions. We've had this certified in California. Anybody can see the certifications, the paperwork, the diesel trucks. We took a catalytic converter off of a transport truck and put it into the carb emissions and had it certified with no emissions controls on it whatsoever. And it was cleaner than you could ever have. And of course, it had 20% more torque. It just was many, many times more efficient. But the world wasn't quite ready for it yet. And we didn't have this breakthrough. This breakthrough it requires so much less electricity, no rare earth materials. It's very tiny. And the best news is you don't have to believe me. I can tell you that some of the best astronauts in the world that do propulsion have verified this stuff and came up with their own numbers of 50x reduction. We have guys on our team that were hired to commercialize and productize for Ballard Hydrogen. The former CEO of Sony Corporation has just recently agreed to be able to join our team for North America. Like, there's lots of third-party verification, but the best part is have your own experience. We have put this into and made it open source. To translate that, anybody can have the blueprints, and you can go get this and build it yourself with no rare earth materials. It's actually fairly simple. It does not break any laws of thermodynamics. It's all auditable. It all runs. It's not just on a bench. It's out there in the wild. And this works. So we're looking for the best way to be able to take this to the market. And that's where we went cryptocurrency. So we have a mature cryptocurrency that's ready to go, a platform to be able to connect this to. And then what's the biggest thing with mining cryptocurrency? Energy. And then what's the next thing? The back door on the chipsets. Well, what if we had in our consortium a company that already has built, successfully crowdsource funded, a open source hardware platform for cryptocurrency mining? And what if every vehicle was on the blockchain for many positive reasons, but you literally have these nodes that would do energy, communication, transportation, so on, all from this open source platform. So it's the very first decentralized infrastructure. And anything centralized becomes a poison, right? You go over to Rome and you go through the aqueducts and you go, what's this? Oh, well, when they got cracks in the aqueduct, they used this malleable stuff they pushed in there. What's that? Lead. Oh, so they went crazy. Yeah. On this planet, we have had many, many, many civilizations. Thanks to, LiDAR and satellites today, we've been able to see stuff that's like 300 feet underneath the ocean, to the Arctic, to the Amazon rainforest, and you go, wow, we have had global civilizations on this planet many times. We've centralized everything. Our immune systems went down. Something happened. Boom, gone. Now, that could be us. It could be a combination of something falling from the sky, movements in the tectonic plates, the polar stuff. There's many, many different things. But at the end of the day, anything centralized becomes a poison. This decentralization of infrastructure, and to boldly go where no infrastructure has gone before, like Africa, which, when Africa lights up, the rest of the world, whatever they do, we're going to have to do. So you might as well inject this. Look at Akon with Senegal with billions of dollars in solar, that type of stuff with his cryptocurrency. That's what we want to do. There's Mark Shuttleworth, close to $1 billion by selling it to VeriSign. He was an astronaut, created Ubuntu, which is a distribution of Linux and open source. We're running it on that. We're using Research in Motion, BlackBerry's protocols with their hardware for the stuff that we're doing. So like we're using the best breed, best to fit. And from green territories like Costa Rica that don't make cars, they don't make oil. But anyway, I'm pretty excited. So
let me stop you there. I'm going to rewind a second to the blueprints for anybody out there to be able to take a look at it. Because, my interest is also in the Paradev magnetic motors. And one of the best things is you can run that right in your house, quote unquote, so I've heard. And then you just have a simple battery storage unit there. And instead of those losses such as you're talking about, you're creating that power right in or close to your home, whether it be a garage or whatnot. But those Paradev blueprints are quite findable around. And if you look back in Nikola Tesla's patents and then you bring forward and you see the innovations in the blueprints that you can use and actually go off to somebody with CNC lathe and say, I need this exactly right here. So I can just download the PDF, take it off to somebody who's running a tooling shop and say, please make this for me and use this particular type of material. We need this type of magnet. It needs to be drilled in at this many degrees offset so the magnets spin and then release their magnetic fields and push each other forward. All good. But I can find that easily. But you just said, if I want to utilize this into my car and I'm sitting here going, all right, I understand taking off the catalytic converter. And I've seen back in the day when people are recirculating, recycling their exhaust to then push in for the next cycle. I understood that, but where am I going to find this so I can build one if I have a tooling shop and then say, hey, I want to build this and I have a mechanic friend that can then install it. So how do I find all this online, or where do I even find? Is it on the blockchain online or website? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, you can go to tesnic.com.
Yeah, how do you spell that? T-E-Z?
Yeah, N-I-C, tesnic.com. So how this all started was we were doing electric bikes, and then we got into this bike called the Saran or the Segway X260, and we were making like an AMG kit for it. It's like a tuner kit or a hot rod kit to make it go twice as far, twice as fast. We were playing with this thing. It's this unicorn. It's this whole new market segment. It's not an e-bike. It's not an electric motorcycle. Something between 120 pounds, but it performs like a 600cc motorcycle. So it's revolutionary. It's just incredible and very sexy. Because today, if you want something to happen, it has to be fun and sexy. Because humans just don't do anything else. And to change human behavior is the hardest thing on the planet. You have to ostracize existing behavior and show an example of a new behavior that people want to gravitate towards. And that's the only way to do that. An NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, behavioral standpoint, right? That's the only thing that's successful. They can go to Tesnic and they'll be able to see some of this stuff, and it's in the process of being put up on the blockchain, the foundation. Now, people are going to have a question in their head, how do you make money? What are you doing? Okay, you're going to run a crypto? Okay, great. You got a block of that? Okay, great. But we're doing it like Red Hat Linux. So what happens is that we make money from the integration, customization, support, remote monitoring, maintenance, anything to do with standards, training, certification. So we're creating like an open source software project because it really is mostly software for us, right? You can get a hold of materials, we're happy to make them and help to enable other people to make them. That's really the magic, is that we have a way for everybody to monetize this and make use of it and integrate it. And that's been the challenge for everybody else. There's tons and tons of innovations on this planet, but find a business model and a way to market and how to execute a team to do that. Because people that invest, they invest in teams that have a track record of success in that space of being able to execute and to successfully go to market. Products change, technology changes, the mood of the market changes all the time. But at the end of the day, if you have a team with a track record of success, like Alex Logie is on our team, in hydrogen in the last 5 months, he turned 3 cents into $1.53 with $4.5 million as the buy-in at 3 cents. And Alex Logie was at Citibank for 12 years doing derivatives, 3 largest clean tech funds in the world, founder, one sold off to Bear Stearns. In the cannabis industry, he's made a lot of people lots and lots of millions of dollars. So the team we have is incredible. From a security standpoint, we have Alex Eisen, who has worked at the Department of Defense protecting the Pentagon from live intrusions. And then he moved off to do other things for other companies, including to the point where he's now consulting to be able to do security for entire countries. There's Luke Layton, who has successfully made open source hardware, including now a chipset, So it's just, we're really just an integrator of all the technologies out there and putting a team and a revenue and business model to it and a way to monetize it and for it to be absorbed in a way that works. Because like you said, there's lots of stuff out there that you could bring down and make, but the challenge is we don't have enough time. How do we get from here to there? Most people don't know where here is. They know where there is because that's in their heart and they know where we should be. But where is here? And there's no science without measurement. And, thing doesn't exist unless you measure and observe it. So the bottom line here is that think of a diesel locomotive like a train. They're like a Prius, just a giant Prius, the very first Prius, because whether it be a big ocean-going ship, they turn big diesel motors and they just sit there and you listen to a train on the side of the track. And why is it just sitting there going, whoa? It's because the most efficient burn of the fuel, and then they turn it into electricity with a generator, with a dyno. And then that turns it into electricity that goes into a battery in a pack. And then that is used to be able to propel it down the track because it gives it lots of torque. It's usable power. Because when you try and take off on a car, that first part that you do with the combustion engine is very inefficient because it has a certain power band to burn the fuel. So with us, the hydrogen's made, goes in. And the final stage of what we're doing is we have a motor that's ceramic, that's like a rotary engine and Wankel motor put together, is the best way to describe it, to be backward compatible for people to understand. And then what happens is that if you take a look at a hydrogen vessel that you would make hydrogen in, it looks an awful lot like, and it's made of nickel, a sleeve that goes into the block of an engine. So they made it so that the actual cylinder where the piston goes up and down is what's used to make the actual hydrogen. So you have a combustion engine where the cylinder itself is creating the dynamics to be able to create the hydrogen on demand for when it gets to top dead center and has the ignition, just as it's required. Then you have magnets around that to be able to create a generator, electric motor, hydrogen, and combustion all in one, all four in a ceramic motor. And it runs at 26 degrees Celsius. This is what's really weird. We're making hydrogen at 26 degrees Celsius. Everybody's 15 above. So, and again, we're happy to share this with the world. You can see it and you can make it yourself. So you don't have to believe in all the third-party verification, the huge people that are on our team. All of this information, we're giving it through the foundation to everybody to make it themselves. What's magical is it's backward compatible. So imagine being able to get the diesels and gas engines and nuclear plants and everything else that's around the world that are steam, mostly steam generators, coal, oil, gas, and being able to retrofit them to do this immediately. So to be backward compatible is magical because we don't have the time and the resources to do a forklift upgrade. You've got Tesla's got a $550 billion valuation. They got some serious challenges around the world. Subsidies for electric cars may or may not be there based on the financial situation of governments of the world today. That could be a challenge.
Let me stop you there. So I know there's like 1,000 people sitting going, all right, where can I find this? Am I going to a site or am I going somewhere? Tell me how to, I want to build one of these today.
You go to tesnik.com, and at tesnik.com, the information is there. It's by request by certain people at this point until we completely open source it, because we're looking for certain organizations and individuals to be able to come to us, and we share this information with them to verify it, and then we bring it out to everybody all at once. So that's only because we're only gating it because of our own internal resources, because this only happened recently, last 3 to 4 months, this breakthrough. So we just have to scale up to be able to do that. So we want certain people that can help us to scale, to say, hey, look, I've done open source projects before. I've done foundations before. I am in this sector. I know what you're talking about. I have some type of value to help you to scale this. And that's initially what our ask is, right? Is the people to say, hey, I understand what you're talking about. I'd like to help you to disseminate this information as fast as possible. So that's really our ask, And we started out with this bike, and I asked, what's the challenge that we have here is, I said, look, this e-bike, it's a great toy when it first starts out because it goes 30 miles on a charge and goes 40 miles an hour, weighs 120 pounds. It's a dirt bike. It's a lot of fun, but it doesn't go far enough and fast enough, and it takes 3 hours to charge. So we got it down to 20 minutes to charge, and it would go twice as far, twice as fast, and much smoother, and so on. So the rapid charging, we used a variable speed charger with an oscilloscope with a pulsing power supply is what we did. So it would ping it, see what's from the oscilloscope, and then it would send the next amount of amperage, wattage, and voltage because it's highly varied as the cells charge up. So we did that, and then one day I said, hey, why can't we get regen to be able to be more than like 5, 10, 15%? I said, well, the issue is you have a lot of power in a very short time period. So capacitors, batteries, whatever, there's no real way to store that in a cost-effective way. The space budget for an e-bike, it's just never going to happen. I said, well, what about just turning it instantly into hydrogen and putting it in a little container under 100 PSI, 300 PSI? And they went, wait a minute, that might work. So there's no electric motors in the world that are as good at generating as they are as propulsion moving forward. And they have gearing systems for reduction, which really screws up the whole process. I said, well, I found a motor that has 3 rotors inside of it, no windings, permanent magnets, and basically it's a 3 kilowatt motor that acts like a 16 kilowatt motor and is still air cooled. And they're like, what? I said, yeah, it's about just not much bigger than a 3 kilowatt motor. And it doesn't require any gear reduction either. It's like 3 motors in one, and it's way past 3 phases. Because of a pulsing power supply, it's pretty much unlimited phase because of how it works. It's like 3 motors in one. So the first one would be like your first gear, second gear, third gear. So then we went, wait a minute. Okay, we can produce the power that we need, and we turn it into hydrogen. And this is the capacitor. This is the storage. And then it goes into a little combustion engine. And then that slows the energy down so you can put it into the cells without warping them. And this is how we got to where we are today. But it happened so fast. You know, I'm not necessarily a spiritual or a religious person, but I can say there's got to be some type of grand design that just laid this stuff out for us. Because it was like, well, we need a battery configured in a certain way. And then boom, that just showed up. It's just so many things showed up so fast that it's you can't explain it other than somebody out there or something out there is, you know, it's like when Darwin met the platypus. It's like, wait a minute, there are some exceptions here. There are some anomalies we have to take a look at. There's got to be some intelligence. There's got to be something out there, right? Because this can't just happen.
If you weren't a believer, you are now, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Because nobody on the team, and they're very, very logical Spock-like people that are very successful in many different, you know, areas, have said, you know, this is impossible to explain through coincidence, right? It's completely impossible. So we're on a trajectory, and there's definitely winds in our sails. So the challenge with an all-electric car, of course, is the subsidies are going away. Tesla sold $2 billion in carbon credits. But the challenge is that there's no more carbon credits until the governments decide, because they ate them up so fast. You know, there's all these challenges for electric cars moving forward, you know, getting it serviced. Rich rebuilds, right? The guy that got the used Tesla had water damage and then had a whole bunch of challenges working with it. And then, you know, he had $200,000 in credits for his referral program, and then just took it away from him. And now he's like, I bought a big diesel truck. Forget this. I tried to do all this stuff and I found out there's a whole bunch of problems. So it's just a cult at the end of the day. And the irony is that he did that. We contacted Rich Rebuilds and said, hey, you know what? The irony is we can take your turbocharged Cummins diesel in that GM pickup truck with a lift kit, 4x4, and we can turn it into something way cleaner than an electric car or a hybrid of any type. And that blew his mind.
Let me stop you there. And again, you know, coming out with the reductions, you can carry all your methane expelling cattle around you, pulling them in a trailer with no problem, because I know I'm going to step on a few toes by saying this, but this whole carbon credit thing makes zero sense. And it's for anybody with logical thinking, you just have to step back a second and say, wait, hold on. If it's such an existential threat to society and human civilization itself that even 1 gram of carbon is emitted into the atmosphere, yet you're telling me, okay, on the other side of the planet, they're allowed to put carbon in the atmosphere, but on this side of the planet, you need to buy something where you can offset it, and then you can trade something on paper. But wait a minute, you put something in the atmosphere, so regardless if it's one company does half of what it did and the other one does one, and then you're offsetting, and but wait a second. The carbon went into the atmosphere. If it's such an existential threat that we've been just slammed with in the media, that's like saying, well, you only take a little bit of cyanide, and what you don't take, I'll take, because, you know, we're offsetting the amount of cyanide. It's almost something like this is the most ridiculous thing that you've ever heard. And I know there's a big, you know, carbon trading floor on hold now, and I know it is going to, or has proposed to be, you know, on the business edge of things as a trading platform in itself and a value prop for, you know, business to exchange business. But that whole thing about you put something in the atmosphere. In a news story, they're writing one thing at the top, like, oh, carbon dioxide is so dangerous, it's going to kill us all. And then, you know, the next one. But by the way, if you pay for it, you can have somebody manufacture on the other side of the planet. Some of these messages we're getting in the media about what's acceptable, how it's supposed to work, you know, talking out both sides of the mouth. It's infuriating and it irks me a little bit that just the average people out in the news feeds don't see through that garbage, or else the entire planet's populace would have said, all right, put a cork in it. That makes no sense. This thing is a sham. And if you're really true about what you say with carbon reductions, because it's such a threat, stop all manufacturing on the planet. But we know that hasn't happened at all. And there, I digress. I'll keep rambling along there because it really is one of my pet peeves about this whole green economy. And, this whole thing about magnets too, you mentioned magnets. Why is it that we have not been moving forward with any of these patents that have been put up for the last 100 years with devices that can generate electricity using the Earth's magnetic field, propelling magnets to spin something to generate electricity? And you can put that something in whatever device you want to. Why is there nothing out there? Why does it always have to be an oil-based something that brings us to produce power? This whole hydrogen thing I'm super excited about for indoor vertical agriculture, and the heat also, to be able to run your electricity, to have your heaters in greenhouses and also your lights on the vertical trays. It's exciting for me to do this, but why is it that we've been dissuaded from talking about magnetic motors, using them, developing them, and then hydrogen, has been put on the back shelf for so long. It's been talked about for how many decades now, and finally we're coming to something where it's going to be usable. And you're talking about bringing it out into the public arena, and I'm like, yeah, are they really going to allow that to move forward? Because everything that brings us up to this decentralized lifestyle where we're not beholden to government and systems and top-down pyramidal hierarchies, etc., and you're so close, I can taste it, I can see it. But do you really think they're going to let it go? Because these magnetic motors did, and they're trying to slam down carbon credits up and down the wazoo there. So I see a lot of different things happening here, a lot of different gears in motion, no pun intended.
But right now, the wants and desires are over. Even the big guys have decided that are in oil and US dollar, that it's a cryptocurrency that's the future, and hydrogen. It has to be, because everybody breathes the same air, the same water, the same food.